dive straight into more specifics. And on the southeast end of the island is the capital of Mel and its harbor. And you can see it enlarged there with an aerial view. In fact, where did my pointer go? Everybody see okay? So this is the city of Mel. This is Escastá right here, which is more or less like a suburb. And the Isle of La Mola is this island right here. And here's the fascinating part. The fortress of Isabell II encompasses the entire island. Look, that's not a clicker. There we go. Now, further down here is another fort, and this is St. Philippe. This fort really no longer exists. It was destroyed twice and never fully rebuilt. There are pieces and parts to it there that you can tour. There are underground tunnels and labyrinths that you can go through, but it is only open during tourist season. And we have yet to venture there during the middle of tourist season. And we'll explain why later. But what did it look like? That's a picture right there. Doesn't it look a lot like the Castillo de San Marcos? So this is a distance shot looking at La Mola, the Isle of Mola, and you can see a number of the batteries located here on the western front. A few of the buildings up there. It actually currently has two Vickers guns, 15-foot guns. I forget the centimeter size for all of you wartime historians, but they're massive. I think they had a range of like 30-something miles. Here's an aerial shot of it. Half of the fortress is below ground. And really, the whole thing is just a rock island. Very barren, very desert landscape-like. To kind of give you an idea of scale, that's about the size of our Castillo de San Marcos, which is about the size of this building right here. And then you have the rest of this entire fortress, about half of which is underground. It is a massive exhibit attraction to visit. It was started in 1708, but never officially completed. It never, oddly enough, well, actually I shouldn't say oddly, but it has never been actively involved in an attack or a wartime action. I think most people, when they saw it completed, were like, there's no way, so why attack it? You're not going to win. Last active duty was in the 1930s. And actually those guns were put up there, the big one I just showed you was in the 60s, after World War II, but I don't think they were ever fired except for training purposes. It primarily served as protection for the Mahon Harbor, and it was a military prison at one time, and served under 7 flags: Spain, England, France, England, Spain, England, and Spain again. Every time it transferred peacefully from one treaty to another. Now, St. Philippe, on the other hand, the other fort that I showed you, was attacked and completely, burned or destroyed to the ground twice. And the last time they just never rebuilt it. The island itself, Menorca, has been attacked a number of times and has changed hands. Back in the 1300s, the Moors came from Africa, and they pretty much devastated the island. And if I remember correctly, somewhere around 1,000, 1,100 slaves, Menorcan slaves, were taken back to Africa. So quite frankly, if you are of Menorcan descent in this room, there's a good chance you have a distant cousin that has grown up in northern Africa. I also learned while we were there that there was an entire group of Menorcans that not only immigrated to St. Augustine, or New Smyrna, then St. Augustine, but also Argentina. Interesting. You always learn something. Let's see here. So a few pictures of the fortress on La Mola. The water there is absolutely incredibly beautiful, crystal clear. The building on the right is a military prison. Most of the island is in ruins now, and like you guys would like to get new carpet, they would like money to be able to restore one or two of their buildings. And this building here, I would probably say it's 2 stories, but probably more like the equivalent of close to 3 stories in our height style, which would be like 30 feet. And it's probably about, I don't know, 300 feet long. And they have a number of these buildings there. This was one of the entrances into the main courtyard. Northern Battery, Eastern Battery here, and the Western Battery looking back over Mel. So what did the fortress of Isabel II provide? Security of the harbor and the local communities of both Maun and Escastal. Security of the military sailing fleet. One thing you have to think about, these were sailing ships back then, and they were very susceptible to what the wind was doing. So if you had a fleet of ships, you just couldn't necessarily anchor them offshore, and the next day 10 to 12 foot seas blow up, and your entire fleet sitting offshore in rough water. So you needed a safe place to keep them. And that harbor that I showed you was, and it's a natural harbor, is where everybody wanted to keep their fleet. So depending upon who it was, the English, the Spanish, the French, they really prized the harbor for that. And in fact, even more in modern day times, back again when the English took back over, they wanted to keep their ships there. In fact, they had a military a military hospital, which is called Isla del Rey, and another tourist attraction now, and really a cool place to visit. Also, Isabel II's fortress controlled shipping, so access to good and trade. And you have to think, Algiers, Africa, is really only about 150 miles away. Marseille, France. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correct. I don't speak French. But that would be the closest port to them, was about 140 miles away. Sardinia is about 150 miles away, and Barcelona is about 120 miles away. So they're kind of centrally located in this circular geographic region for trade. For the common soldier that was stationed there, it would have probably been a lonely place outside of your comrades or your fellow soldiers that you were with, because there wasn't anything there. You were completely isolated from the town. A barren rock. I don't know if you noticed, but on that overhead aerial picture, there are no trees on the island. There's scrub, and that's about it. And for most of the fortress being below ground, it would have been very isolating in the dark. In the summer, it would have been nice because it would have been cooler underground, but in the winter, it would have been very cold. Most people don't think about it, but Menorca is at the same latitude as Pennsylvania and can get rather cold, especially when the winds blow 30, 40 knots. And that can happen on any given day. 1 hour, you're beautiful, beach weather. The next hour, it's blowing 40 knots. Water spouts are coming down on you, and that's a very typical scenario. Also, you have to think about that the interiors were primarily lit with either port lights or ballisteria, which are open-cut windows. We'll see those a little bit later. Or torches, oil lamps. They didn't have electricity. So my goal was, when I got below in these lower areas of the fortress, seeing the light coming in to these fortresses was, as a photographer, my obsession to go, we've got to capture this. This is a unique subject. When all of us go to a tourist attraction, what do? We all stand in the same spot as everybody else, and we take the same photos as everybody else. We take the exterior shot, the entrance, the leaving, standing next to the cannon, all the things that we do as tourists. This particular idea I had was completely opposite. I don't want to see anything that's recognizable. What I want to focus on is this light. And the reason being, as a soldier, in this particular case, the light would have been key. The light would have been your world. Thus was born the exhibit Interspectrum. When you enclose yourself within the dark rooms for long periods, your eyes will adjust and begin to absorb the full spectrum that is reflected from the plaster, the pigments, and the mold. The textures will become deep and the colors rich, and only after much reflection will your mind appreciate the significance of the inner light. Meaning, you just came in from up top, it's blazing hot, you come down below, it's dark. And the only thing you had to guide you by were these, on the right there you see, balusteria. Mostly designed not for light, but for gun ports. But that was your light. And how they refracted light, and who knows what refracted means. That means to divide the light up into different colors. They're actually prisms, not of glass, but just the way that they're shaped. Because they're triangular, that means you can see out, stick a gun out, and look either direction. Well, actually it would be more like this. But if somebody was shooting at you, they had to get through a little slit to hit you. So here's a couple of other photographs from inside. The underground works go forever. I mean, just go and go and go. And there are some areas that do not have balusteria. And if they did not have modern day electrical lighting, you couldn't see anything. It would be pitch black. Some of these long hallways are 3 and 4 stories deep. So you go down level, you go down a level, you walk a ways, you go down a level, and then you walk. You're looking, checking it all out, and next thing you know, you get to the end, and you're looking up the staircase that goes forever to get out. Like 400 steps to get out of there. But it's really fascinating. A few other photographs. One of the things I wanted to point out is that their architecture is, and their ability to mold shapes out of raw stone is absolutely amazing. The fact that a majority of all the underground earthworks is made on a curve. Everything is a curve. Now we've got a straight line here, but actually the curve is going this way around in a circular motion. This ceiling is art. They did circular staircases. And then you get to this room right here where they could have just brought the bricks together into a point. Oh no, you can't do that. You got to cut the corner off of it. So it makes it even that much more difficult for a mason to make these blocks marry up. Granted, this fort was built in 1708. It was started prior to that, and it had been built in stages over time. But it's absolutely amazing, the stonework and how well it has lasted. So a strange phenomenon that most of us have experienced at one time or another is that if you're down in this labyrinth and somebody calls out, because you're a cadet, or what's the most common layer of soldier? Is a private in our army, correct? Yeah. So you're a base level soldier. You don't know anything. You don't know if war's getting ready to happen, if it's a training exercise, whatever it may be. And they call the arms. I didn't bring the one photograph with me, but this is, it doesn't show as well on the screen. This particular tunnel, 77 rooms. quarter-mile long. Call to arms. You're in station 36. You and your buddy. It's 2 people per station. You get to 34 and lose count. What do you do? They all look exactly alike. You get to 56. I gotta go to the bathroom. So all you had, a station, is a box. It's literally a doorway, an arched doorway coming in, and you're in a box. And you have 2 ballisteria in front of you. And your job was to fire out those ballisteria. You've been sitting there for an hour, they say the enemy's coming. What's the first thing you do? You run to the window, you stick your gun out, and you start looking. What can you see? Nothing. Why? Because you've been in a dark room, and now you're staring at bright light coming right at you. So you're blinded. So now you've been staring at this bright light, your eyes have finally adjusted, your pupils have gotten small, and it's like, okay, everybody relax, go back to what you were doing. So you turn around and go into your room. Well, what can you see? Nothing. Because your pupils are too small. So it must, and think, we didn't have sunglasses back then, or they didn't. So you have to think about the difficulty of a soldier. Now this light coming through here is, that's their security of, okay, it's daytime. If you're down there, you don't know if it's daytime or nighttime unless you've got light coming through. It's your access to the outside world. Otherwise you're just in some cave, hidden there with your partner, your buddy, and you can't immediately see what's happening outside, and you can't go back to seeing what you saw on the inside. So at the same time, it was kind of like an oxymoron dealing with, the yin and yang of the light of what you wanted, but what could it do for you? So what was the purpose of the Castillo, other than replacing wooden forts? Was to protect the harbor entrance. I don't know who mentioned that. The harbor entrance was key to the survival of the city. Protect the town and Spain's interest, because remember, they're developing the Atlantic coast of all these Spanish communities for Spain. And it was also built to protect the town people. Now, this is a little bit of an oddity, because Isabella was not designed to protect the town people. It's actually remote. The town's over here at one end of the harbor, and Isabella's over here at the other end of the harbor. Now, St. Philippe, the original fort, was a little bit closer, but still quite a distance to get your town people to the fort and protect them. Whereas in St. Augustine, the town was pretty much built around the fort, the community. And as we'll see in just a minute, it was actually used to protect the community. So, in defense of the community, there were actually 4 major raids on the fort. The first being Drake's raid in 1586, then Sears' raid in 1668. And these were the 2 that destroyed the wooden forts. From there, they built the new coquina Castillo de San Marcos. Not long after, in 1702, Governor Moore came along from South Carolina. Am I correct on that, historians? And he laid siege to the city. So in this particular case, all the townspeople, and as much as they could carry, went to the fort. And they were able to protect most everybody that was in the fort, but they could not protect the town. The town was mostly destroyed and burnt down. Not all of it, but most of it. But they were able to protect a lot of the citizens. So here, in this particular case, it is a protection of the community. And then again, Oglethorpe comes around in 1740 and does another raid that was unsuccessful on the fort. So, knowing what the Castillo de San Marcos had done for its community, and then looking back at what I had captured at the Fortress of Isabell II, I said to myself, we've got to draw a correlation between the 2. These are 2, for me and my family, 2 significant structures that played a role in my family's survival. Now, directly, probably not. because all of this happened long before my family got here. But what would have happened if the Castillo de San Marcos had fallen? What if the Spanish had backed out of building the Castillo de San Marcos? You know, I think it would have painted a whole different picture on St. Augustine, which St. Augustine for me was survival, for my family was survival. So I had to draw a correlation between the photographs I took in Isabell II and the Castillo. And it was a little bit difficult because they're built completely different, two different materials. One's above and below ground. The Castillo is only above ground. The Castillo doesn't have ballesteria like the La Mola Fortress has. So some significant differences, but nonetheless, I was able to show how light coming into the inner rooms would have played a part on those who needed it. And think about this. You're a community member, farmer, fisherman, tradesman, you have a store, you're a baker, whatever it may be. Raids coming on you. Governor Moore's coming down with all of his army to sack the city. You go into the fort. You live in the fort for a month and a half. Dirt floors, mildewed walls, bacteria, animals, humans, all together. You know, you can imagine how terrifying it would have been. Cannons going off, muskets going off. It had to have been a terrifying event. And if you would have been stuck and enclosed in pure darkness, it would have been even worse and would have psychologically taken its toll on you. So to have the light coming through these windows and, you know, giving you a little bit of a sense of hope, I think would have been a tremendous psychological advantage for those who survived and able to come out and go, okay, you know, let's rebuild and start this over again. People ask me what this is, and that is one of the, I've never actually officially found the correct term for it, but the columns that you walk into on the corner of each of the four corners, you actually look straight up, and the windows are up above your head. This image is entitled Osceola's Window. I don't know how many of you remember the story of Osceola being imprisoned. They are actually, the Castillo de San Marcos served as a prison for many years. And I guess that holds true of a lot of fortresses, because Isabell II held prisoners, you know, when it was no longer in active military use. I mean, as far as providing safety, let's say. Same thing for the Castillo de San Marcos. What's the fort down in the Dry Tortugas?
Fort Jefferson.
Fort Jefferson was a prison. So a lot of times after it had outlived its military use, they used it as a prison. A few other photos from the exhibit. Oh, did I go backwards? Let's see here. Sorry, okay. There we go. So what did the forts mean to my family? Security from invasion, security of trade. If you can't make a living, you can't live, right? Establishment and continuation of your community. And then quite frankly, I think it was peace of mind. I mean, knowing that you had protection there. So I think both of them played a vital role in not only St. Augustine, but in the continuation of Menorca. Now it's a tourist attraction just like ours is. Salute. Thank you.